Welcome to Everlutionary, a podcast about how we can restore balance and heal the world. Every episode of my show, we explore the future of humanity and how we've gotten to where we are today through inspirational stories about healing, science, and mysticism. We'll see how we can reshape our society to create a world free of violence. I'm your host, Hawah Kasat. Hey, thank you all for tuning in today. I am really grateful to have you here. I know there's so many places you could be, so many things you could be listening to right now, and you choosing to be here with me, I do not take that for granted. And for me, this entire episode today is about not taking things for granted. It's about rooting ourselves in gratitude and understanding the transformative power of gratitude in our lives. And I know that many of you can really relate to this. I've learned this in my own life, that gratitude is one of the ways that I am able to keep everything in perspective. So gratitude, it brings birth to perspective. And sometimes there's nothing more important in our lives when we are in the midst of some disaster, like a car accident or the diagnosis of a medical condition, losing your job. When tragedy strikes, it has a way to break us, and it has a way to also remind us of the little things we need to be grateful for. So tragedy is a moment to root in gratitude. And my days and months have constantly been cultivating this practice. And it's a really special opportunity to root into your own life right now. It's a season of being grateful. It's a season of giving thanks. One thing that I've been doing for years and years and years is just taking a minute, taking even 30 seconds before starting a meal and just closing my eyes, taking some silence, and bringing into my awareness a handful of things that I'm grateful for and why I'm lucky. It might be lucky and grateful for having a hot meal. It might be that I'm grateful to have a roof over my head. It might be that I'm grateful that my friend from 5 years ago gave me a call out of the blue and texted me. Whatever it is, I just try to focus on a few things that I'm grateful for before I begin eating. It's a simple gratitude practice because gratitude to me is remembering and it's realizing that we are interconnected, and gratitude is not taking things for granted. And gratitude helps us as people. It helps us realize that we wouldn't be where we are in life without the help of others. So a lot of gratitude practice is about connecting with how other people in our lives and how external situations and forces are contributing to our current circumstance. Even if our current circumstance is horrible, it's also an amazing opportunity to remember that it could be or it could have been worse. So gratitude is this really beautiful bridge that reminds us that even when we're in the dumps and even when things seem like they couldn't get any worse, sometimes I just take a moment and think about, well, how could it have been worse? And then that helps me to have a little bit of a positive spin and some optimism within the hard situation that I am in. So I offer you that. I offer you that as we get ready for this conversation with Reggie Hubbard. He recently has survived a life-altering stroke and found himself in the hospital. We're going to hear about his story of recovery and his resilience and how gratitude was really a critical part of him moving through the stroke. And through this conversation, you'll have some opportunity to hear about grief and understand the relationship with grief and gratitude. Reggie Hubbard is just an incredible, gifted, and brilliant teacher. He's the founder of Active Peace, which has a mission to serve all communities by helping people nurture foundational habits of physical, emotional, and social well-being. And Reggie comes from a long tradition of political strategy, organizing, and activism. So he has navigated the turbulent waters of major political campaigns from the Barack Obama administration to the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign to working in building bridges inside the halls of the United States Capitol building. Reggie has used his calm as his superpower to bridge tactical political insight with spiritual wisdom. He's a teacher. And when he got hit with the medical experience that he had, he was able to lean into all of his teachings, all of his own personal practices to help him go deeper into a journey of self-discovery. My hope is that this conversation that you listen to today will put into perspective for you how you can turn tragedy into triumph. All right, Reggie, what's up, baby? So happy to have you here on the Everlutionary podcast. I know we've been trying to line this up for a minute, and now we are here.
I'm happy to be here, man. I'm happy that this has worked out. That didn't really work out the first time, but I think that's endemic of how life is happening these days. And I know we're going to focus on gratitude. And one of the things I'm grateful for is sound. Sound has been an elixir in my life before my stroke. It has been a sustainer in my stroke recovery. And I think in times now, especially when there is a heightened sense of, that remembering that something simple like can just settle everything. That, with the blah, 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 you're wrong. No, you're wrong. That allows the mind to focus on the spaciousness of the sound, which points to silence, which is the language of God and art. Miracles manifest from sacred sound and silence. So to kick us off, I'm going to play this sacred sound, which is 350 years old, for the benefit of all listeners, so that you may have a rested and regulated nervous system and clear mind and open heart for the purpose of our gratitude conversation. So I'll play this bowl 11 times. 11 is the number of manifestation and new pathways. So may this sound offering manifest clear peace and pathways of creativity in your heart and mind. Let's all take a deep inhale through the nose. Exhale out nose or mouth. If eyes have closed, gently blink them open. Let the games begin.
Wow. Thank you for the centering, Reggie. You've been bringing so much medicine to all of us through your story, through your sound vibration, keeping the vibration high, through the resonance of the gong. I'm hoping we're going to get through a lot of it in this conversation today. A lot of opportunity to explore, though, because not everyone knows your full story of what you experienced just a few months ago. And many of us, either in our own personal lives, we were dealing with our own health hurdles, or we have family members that are dealing with health hurdles. We have family members that are aging or dealing with sickness, a lot of loss through the COVID pandemic. So today we were going to do a special episode on really thinking about gratitude, but I think hearing a little bit more of your story is where I would want to root in gratitude. So could you share a little bit about what you experienced and how you're moving through it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So on March 31st, I went to bed in Columbia, South Carolina. My girlfriend and I, dear Alexis, she and I were traveling to Georgia for one of her best friend's weddings. And as people in their mid 40s know, regardless of your health, you have to get up and pee in the middle of the night, right? So I did what most people in their 40s do. You get up and pee at least once. Some days you have zero. But anyway, 4:30 in the morning, I wake up, go to the bathroom, pee as normal, TMI, but whatever. Life is life. We all do it. And come out of the bathroom, man, and my left leg just felt like stopped working. And I hit the floor. And I'm like, okay, what was that? And so I get my wits about me.
You hit the floor like you fell down to the ground, hit the floor.
Yeah, if you've ever had like your ankle goes to sleep or something, the leg just deadens or something like that. But it felt like that as an analogy, but it was way more like, yo, what had just happened? So I'm in the floor on my back. Luckily, there's this huge glass mirror in the hotel that I didn't hit that. I'm a big dude. So like with gravity hits, like I hit the deck and I try to move my left leg. And brother Hawah, as the sun shines in the middle of the day, it didn't move. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm having a fill in the blank stroke. So luckily, I was familiar enough with neurological stuff. My grandfather had a stroke. My uncle died from a stroke the year before. So it's clearly I in my line had the genetics to receive the gift of this teacher. So I call out for my girlfriend.
Well, when you say the gift of this teacher, what do you mean by that?
Stroke has become the frame through which I live my life these days. The stroke has taught me the value of community. The stroke has taught me how to eat better. The stroke has taught me that the blood pressure that you don't take is foolish. Just because, oh, I'll be all right. I'll just breathe through this. I know you and I hold this dear, like yoga asana and the physical aspects of spiritual practice are tools for our spirit. They don't override your genetics, family. So if your mama had high blood pressure, your daddy had high blood pressure, take your ass to the doctor and see if you got it. You can't meditate that away. With awareness, you may be able to augment your diet and set your numbers, but meditating in a delusional state about your genetics only yields suffering to you and your community. So when I talk about stroke being the teacher, it forced some very hard conversations with myself of just like, yo, you really kind of stopped paying attention to yourself after your cousin died. And you really have some grief that allowed you to just slip into levels of physical denial. You just stopped moving. And so that accumulated with a lot of the stress of being a Black dude on the planet and your genetics led to this situation. So that's what I mean by stroke is the teacher. Most people don't say stuff like that. So, oh my God, like, yeah, my new teacher, the stroke. Like, what is this dude talking about? But that's what I mean. And that frame, I think, has been the genesis of the healing transformation journey that took place. Because after I call out for my girlfriend, I was like, yo, I think I'm having a stroke. She's freaking out, bless her lovely heart. And I'm like, no, is my speech slurring for real? I think I'm having a stroke. So by God's grace and ancestral favor, my left leg started to work again. And so I make my way to the bed in the hotel and I was just like, okay, this is kind of serious. And she's like, do we need to go to the doctor? She's like, do you want to go to the doctor? I was like, no. She's like, do we need to go to the doctor? I was like, yes, this is very serious. Do I want to? No. Do we need to? Yes. And so I started playing this sound bowl I'm just keeping it real because, like, ooh,
You're playing a sound bowl while you're having a stroke, my man.
no, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because I was like, I mean, I just had the awareness. I was like, this is bad. This is going to be real bad. And I need to be calm headed into this. So while Alexis is getting all that stuff together, I fortify myself and I'm like, wow, this leg is working. Let's go. Because I'm a load to get out. So we walk to the car, get to the hospital. Luckily, again, by God's grace and ancestral favor, we were 4 miles away from Lexington Medical Center. So shout out to Lexington Medical Center in West Lexington, South Carolina. Y'all are beautiful people that saved my life, and I appreciate that. So we walk into the emergency room, step on the scale, do the intake process. And I was talking about it with Alexis this weekend. She was like, I remember the look of heartbreak on your face when they took your blood pressure and you stepped on the scale. I was like, yeah, because I was like, how did this happen? Oh my God, like, how did this happen? So I was in this whole space of, you dumbass. Like, you know better. And then I was like, okay, you got to get past that because something's not right, dog. Like, now is not the time to beat up on yourself. You really got to get it together. So they admit me. And man, how I said this to you, but for everyone's benefit, my blood pressure was like 225 over 180, like some craziness at the height of the stroke episode. And I saw the look on the emergency room attending doctor's face, and it was just like, "Ooh." And I was like, oh my God, you're looking at me like that. Then I was like, okay, yoga practitioner, okay, spiritual dude, you need to dig deep. And however you can control this situation, you got to figure this out because that look was at you. And they see a lot of stuff. And so if he's alarmed, oh my God, you know what I mean?
Were you at any point afraid? So you've got a history of stroke in your family. So when this first happened, you kind of had like an immediate knowledge, like, oh, I might be having a stroke. Luckily, because if you didn't, you might not have went to the hospital.
Yeah, totally.
And it could have got a lot worse, right?
On some macho stupidity for sure.
Yeah, but did you ever have a moment early on where you were wondering if you were going to make it? Like if you were actually going to live to see tomorrow?
You get to a point where you see the doctor's face and you look at the machine and you're like, those numbers look terrible. And things got super fuzzy for a bit. A lot of talk. We need this and this, so a whole bunch of things to try and stabilize my condition. I don't, and time's a bit of a blur too. So if you've ever been in any adrenalized situation, it could have been 7 minutes, but it felt like a long, 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 long time because it's so distorted. I can't say that I thought I was going to die, but I saw the look on his face. I saw my blood pressure and I was like, this is not good. Something has got to chill. Otherwise, this will cause irreparable harm. So through meditation and medication, we were able to stabilize and they sent me through a whole battery of tests. My legs stopped working in the middle of that because I was totally pedaling my feet back and forth. I was just like, okay, I'm good. I'm good so long as it still works. I'm good so long as it still works. Then it stopped working, Hawah. I was like, oh, wow.
Was that scary? Does that feel scary when you lose complete control of your leg?
I had sensory nerves working. So I lost all motor function, but was able to keep sensory function. And I give gratitude to that differentiation in my cortices, because if I were not able to feel and have lost motor function, I think I would have been super upset. But because I could still feel all the stuff, and being in person, so I'm a bigger guy, and they had me in this like small bed, and they were just like, we can put you in a bigger bed, but I didn't want to get in a bigger bed because I could feel my foot pressed up against the end. And me feeling my foot pressed up against the end allowed me not to trip out that I couldn't move it. Isn't that wild?
That is wild. It almost gave you sanctuary. It made you feel like you had a sense of connection to the leg, even though there's all this doubt about what's going to be your future. that feeling of uncertainty. Like, am I going to ever walk again? Am I going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life? Was your mind going through that cycle of just like all of the scenarios that could play out?
I was so exhausted. I don't think I had the benefit to be able to do that.
Okay.
The stress of the event wiped me out, and I didn't have the luxury to have anxiety because I just didn't have the energy. I felt like I got into a huge fight and luckily made it out of the fight and was so flat. And then I put it out on social media, which was a conscious decision because I was like, if I'm this flat and broken now, I can't hide this, yo. There's no way that I can do this discreetly. So, is there a way that I can be honest about what I'm doing to save my energy to focus on healing? And then, probably one of the more difficult reminders of who I've become, I was like, I need to model this for people. Right. So, I took my teaching vow. That people call me a teacher makes me very uncomfortable because I understand what capital T teaching is all about. And I was like, okay, I don't have the energy to hide this stuff. And if there's another brother or a sister or human out there who's tripping, thinking that they're fine, they need to see that their strong friend, the yoga teacher, just had a near death experience to shake you up. And I can't tell you how many people, brother, it's at least 200 that told me. So you think about like the multiplicative impact of that. They were like, yo, I took my ass to the doctor the next day. I was like, if Reggie had a stroke, like, damn, you know what I mean? Just, I went there. Or my one friend was like, you saved my dad's life because my dad was tripping on some machismo stuff. And she was like, yeah, Reggie had a stroke and you have a history. Your doctor says you have AFib. And if you don't take this medication, your stroke risk spikes. And he was like, Reggie had a stroke. And so because I had a stroke, my friend's dad quietly emailed his doctor and was like, I think I'll go on that medication now. So what a blessing to have had that revelation on like day one that I got to be honest and upfront and loud about this. A, because I need to direct my energy towards my healing. And B, people look up to me even though I can't stand it. So it's not that I can't stand it. I bear the weight of it, not as a burden, but it's not lost on me of the importance of that. So I was like, yo, if me going through this means that people don't have to go through it, give thanks.
Yeah. We ran almost like a similar parallel sort of, at least emotional experience. I didn't have a stroke, clearly, but I had a bike accident that you remember back in 2019. I lost complete motion control of my right leg. I broke my hip. I was in the hospital for probably about 10 days. They had to insert all this titanium into my right leg, my hip. I was probably in more pain than I knew was even possible to experience. The physical pain of it required a lot of pain medications. I was on oxycodone for at least probably a month post-accident, post-surgery. And then I couldn't walk for about 3 months. I was in a wheelchair. I moved from a wheelchair to a walker, and I saw you with the walker too, with 2 wheels. And then I moved from the walker to like the walking cane and the walking stick, which I never wanted to give up after that. I was like, I think I should just have a walking stick for the rest of my life. I feel like I belong with a walking stick. But the pain and the healing, man, the grief, I really feel there's a lot here for us to learn from your experience. And for me personally, the grief I experienced was connected to feeling that life as I know it will never be the same. And there is an attachment to some of the privilege of living a life where you can run up and down the stairs and get from point A to point B without having to think about, is there a ramp? Is there a handicap ramp for somebody with a wheelchair? That privilege that one has, that able-bodied privilege that I really didn't think a lot about, was front and center for me as I was in PT physical therapy for probably like 6 months. How was your recovery psychologically and emotionally from this stroke? And how would you advise people that are listening that are recovering from traumatic accidents or injuries? How would you advise we approach that mentally, emotionally, spiritually?
One, blessing upon your healing and give thanks for the miracle of your healing. Two, have deluded and seduced ourselves into thinking that we're indestructible, man. And the humility of an injury brings you in touch with the beauty of your fragility. That life is fragile is the gift. That it has to be nursed and tended to and nourished is the gift. You can be in situations as you and I were in, and through humility, through diet, through access to care, through supportive community, the amalgamation of all of those things yield a environment where the miraculous healing powers of the body do their thing. Two things I'll say is that give thanks to all that paralysis isn't about pain because it just doesn't move. So I don't know how I would have reacted with pain. It is a trip to have some part of your body just not move. And you can think about it moving and it's just not moving. So that is a trip just to wrap your head around yesterday or whatever. That's a challenge. I remember so the stroke is day 0. And then everything else is the count. So day 0 is the stroke. Day 1, Mr. Hubbard, you've come in, doctor, neurologist comes in, you've had a stroke. And I'm just like, okay, right on. And start playing my singing bowl. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I got to calm down. I got to get out of here. I don't live in South Carolina. You know what I mean? Like I live in Maryland, and that is a long way that way, right? Like I got to get out of critical care. Now that you've confirmed that I did have a near-death experience and that, yes, it was a stroke. Yes, acute stroke, but okay, I had a stroke at 49. Oh my God. And then they start saying stuff. They're like, well, it's good because you're young. And so it's just all of this stuff that starts coming at you. And it's a game that you had to play to get to the next level of your recovery. So my blood pressure had to be consistent at a certain level for 3 days before they would discharge me. And so sometimes you have good readings and sometimes you have readings that are terrible. And so in addition to the stroke, they were like, okay, Mr. Hubbard, your cholesterol is out of control and your A1C is this. So it's just all of this stuff at once. You're just kind of like, oh my gosh, what is going on? So you not only have a stroke, but you have to manage hypertension and your blood sugar, blah, 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 blah. So you go from this myth of invincibility to, there's a lot of stuff going on.
The myth of indestructibility, right?
Right? Until like, man, I got chronic conditions that maybe I've been tripping on for a while on this wellness bullshit that I got to manage post haste in and of themselves. And in the context of a stroke recovery, like, so it's all this stuff. And then there'll be good news and bad news. So I noticed myself going up and down with the news. I noticed that I'm investing a lot of energy that I don't have in these outcomes. So I looked at my Alexis and I was like, listen, sweetie, this is some wild stuff to say in a bed with hella IVs and I can't walk or whatever, but I refuse to get into the up and down. I will not invest in the emotional roller coaster of ups and downs. And my recovery will be guided by the following sentence. How is this happening for me as opposed to why is this happening to me?
Ooh, say that again. How is this happening for me?
As opposed to why is this happening to me?
Wow.
So on day 2, I accepted the stroke as my teacher. And that discipline has guided the trajectory of my healing as a learning journey, as an expression of curiosity. I'm fully ensconced in the miracle of independent ambulatory ability. I don't take that for granted for nothing, man,
Right.
at all. And so even in the context of recent electoral results, I'm just like, yo, I can walk though, son.
Right. The whole world can be falling apart and you can still be like, I can walk.
Yeah.
And it's a blessing to be able to walk.
That wasn't the case 4 months ago.
Wow.
Right.
Right. Where we take things for granted. It's easy to take things for granted when there's no baseline.
Son, the fact that I can have a conversation with you without mental fatigue, give thanks. The fact that, so a stroke is like a bull in a china shop because, again, my teacher, right? So the vessels and the capillaries in the brain are so delicate that when something goes awry there, when a clot is there, the destruction that can take place is like a bull in a china shop. So my area that died was limited to my motor ability in my foot. That could have been speech, man. That could have been sight. It could have been all these different things because the real estate of the brain is super precious. So learning that the bullet, quote unquote, that I dodged, because somehow, again, I don't know, and the doctors don't know, and I honestly don't care because I believe in miracles and the ancestors. So somehow the clot dislodged, which is how I was able to walk again and do all that stuff. And then it set, then it lodged again, then it passed through. It didn't like go and stay. It stuck. Then, you know,
You're hitting the sound bowls,
yeah,
Reggie.
right?
The vibration of the bowl.
I mean, maybe it's that, yo. I mean, right, crazy, right?
I mean, for real.
Right.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Because my poor Alexa, she was like, "You're playing the sound bowl now." I was like, "Yeah, I gotta calm down. I'm freaking out."
Yeah. And if you're going to die, you may as well die with some beautiful sounds around you. If you're going to die, bro, you may as well go out with a gong.
You're so stupid. Right? For real. Yeah.
Go out with a gong.
That would be so on brand.
Yeah. Wow, Reggie. I mean, thank all the heavens that you are still here with us. I said this to you multiple times. Just thank you for not leaving us and remaining in this incarnation. We all benefit from the laughter and the joy and the agile, sharp, philosophical mind that you bring into every situation. And the learning that we can have through your experience is priceless. So, for all of us that are listening to your story, there's so much for us to gain in terms of knowledge and wisdom. And the first thing that I'm always reminded of is just that feeling of deep gratitude. Like you said, like gratitude for walking, gratitude for having fresh water to drink. If you have that privilege, gratitude for a roof over your head. If you have that privilege, gratitude that you have electricity. If one has that privilege. And sometimes in the modern world, the like overly industrialized world, I feel that we take things for granted to the point where the little things that are happening that disturb us because we forget gratitude. We forget to be grateful for the things we have, and we just want more and more and more. And that desire for more and more, for you, the desire for more was just like, hey, can I start moving my toe again? That's more. And so it's a definite kind of reorganizing of gratitude. And I'm imagining that there's still lessons that continue to pour through you even today. Like, how are you changing your current life, your current commitments? Have you shifted anything? Have you reoriented to the world in a way that's tangible?
Well, anyone who knows anything about me knows that I've been involved in activism and electoral politics for most of my adult life. And it's not that I don't believe that politics is important. I will always believe that civic engagement is an essential aspect of our collective redemption. However, recent electoral results have shown me that politics is never going to solve our spiritual problems. If I think I'm better than someone simply because of my gender or orientation, that is a spiritual problem. That is not a political problem. That is a spiritual problem. If I view my opinion as something that is unassailable and not potentially wrong or potentially able to connect with someone else, even if I vehemently disagree with them, that is a spiritual problem. That is a coarsening of compassion, because you can be compassionate in disagreement with someone without the hatred and the acrimony. So there's a level of investment in spiritual solutions and sonic solutions. So while I dislike vehemently the outcome of recent elections in the United States, I didn't know that active peace, which is the name of my teaching practice, I thought active peace was a cool name. The first name that I had for my teaching practice was Active Chill, but Active Chill was a failed Reebok brand. And I was like, ain't no way in hell I would be affiliated with a bad Reebok brand as an Adidas dude, you know? So, like, no shade on Reebok. My grandma loves Reebok. I don't really rock Reebok like that.
Yeah. And for those that are listening and not watching the video, of course, Reggie's got the Adidas hoodie on right now. So, just letting the audio listeners hip to it.
Right. So Active Peace has gone from cool alternative to Reebok failed brand to Dharma transmission. It's gone to how, in times of turmoil, can I do my best to spread peace, encouragement, and clarity when people are actively seeking for chaos and disruption. So, active peace in a time of misinformation and chaos is justice. So, I didn't really know that's what's getting ready to happen, but I'm so clear on that now that the connection to the stroke is that, like, I didn't survive the stroke to do some like inconsequential stuff. I survived the stroke to be of service to people right now. So, politics will always be important, but I, as a result of all that I've been through, am seeking ways to enhance people's spiritual capacity as opposed to political engagement, because there's high political engagement with cynicism, anger, and apathy. That is a recipe for division and disaster. So creating ways that people can come together to lighten their spirit, because all the problems that we face are affecting all of us. Like climate change doesn't give a damn if you live in a Republican or a Democratic district. Public health concerns impact all of us. We should have learned that from the pandemic. Viewing myself, again, better than someone because of my race or gender or identity is a spiritual delusion and sickness. And we've got to figure out ways to break through that delusion. So for me, focusing on spirit more so than politics, not instead of, but shifting that calculus, is a very tangible result of the stroke. Number two is that if you don't sleep and eat right and hydrate and move your body, you will get sick. Reminding people, because I remember someone asked you, what did you learn from the stroke? I was like, I was pissed. And they're like, why were you pissed? I was like, it's the same stuff they've been telling us, man. And my dumbass wasn't listening. It's the same thing. Eat salad, brush your teeth. Like, it's the same thing. Right. But I was like, oh man, I'll get to it later. No, get to it now.
Drink water.
Yeah, drink water. Yeah, you may not want to pee a lot, but give gratitude for the fact that you have functioning urinary tract.
Kidneys and bladders.
Right.
Use them if you got them.
So those are two shifts, I would say. I will always be involved in political strategy and social justice. And you know this because you work a lot in spiritual spaces too. And you and I also have a similar background of activism and shifting the focus from activism to teaching. There are a lot of ignorant people in spiritual spaces that need their spirits crashed open too, because they have done a lot of ingesting of misinformation from our society that has nothing to do with spiritual practice.
Yeah. And spiritual practice is one that takes years and years to cultivate. And it's not something just like habits and the habits we have, whether that's what you do first thing you wake up in the morning, what do you put in your body, what fuel do you put in your body in terms of food, what are you consuming? But spiritually, when we talk about that, it's what are you consuming with your thoughts? What are you consuming when you wake up? What are you reading? What are you writing? What are you watching? These are the questions. What are you saying? These are the things that also impact your physical health. And we are at a time, I mean, I loved how you pulled together the spiritual ways that politics, it doesn't fully tell the whole story. And I think for too long, we've been kind of hyper focused on this story that politics is going to save us. But there is so much more to the story that still needs to be threaded together. And consciousness and culture, to me, are the critical foundation. Politics goes where culture goes. Politics goes where consciousness goes. Politics goes where spirituality goes. And a lot of unfortunate spiritual dispositions right now are tied to what you're calling anger, animosity, othering, not having space to welcome, and creating belonging for all people at the table. It's why we're sitting here during a week of Thanksgiving, which is this holiday in the United States that's supposed to be a celebration for gratitude and giving thanks. It's why many people in the nation of the United States of America have a really hard time with this holiday, because this holiday also is a big hypocrisy. Giving thanks for, what are we really giving thanks for? There's a lot of grief. There's a lot of grieving that people do on this national holiday as well. There's a grieving, there's a loss of land, there's a genocide, which took the lives of over 50 million, if not more, indigenous native people to this land. So I appreciate you tying all that together. It's like that compass, that container is really where we are now. In your spiritual practice, are you feeling grief? Do you feel grief? And if you feel grief, how do you move through grief? How are you working with grief in these days, in these times that we live in?
So I can tell you again, thanks to the teacher known as Stroke, when I didn't know when or how my ability to walk would return, there's tremendous grief, man. Like there's all these things like, man, I wish I would have done this, or if I knew I wasn't going to be able to walk, just there's all this stuff that goes. I grieve in this moment for those who see no hope in this moment. Our culture is amazing at eliminating the gifts of adversity. We've been seduced into thinking that everything has to be instantly awesome and no trouble whatsoever. When I'm here to tell you the blessings of my lived experience in an African American body and as a stroke survivor have given me keen insights of my personal liberation that have translated to communicating for the liberation of all beings. So, for those for whom grief may be present with you, just know that grief is not the end of the story. It's an opportunity to explore deeper. It's an opportunity to sit with that you loved, or sit with that you're disappointed, or sit with the confusion of a situation. I hold a lot of grief sangha, as you know, and grief is the one thing that we all share that none of us talk about. And I think that's another problem that we have politically. Like the past 10 to 15 years have been WTF question mark exclamation point globally. And we haven't had an honest reckoning of the grief and loss of life in the pandemic, innocence, blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of people in the United States who are grieving that they didn't know that America was so racist and sexist. So there's tons of grief that's out there. And I often quote the sage wisdom of my dear sibling in the beautiful struggle, Lama Rod Owens, that talks about, if we as a culture were to organize around our shared suffering, imagine the collective liberation that would take place. Suffering is part of our experience. Grief is something that we all carry. And instead of being like, if I were to ask you, be like, hey, brother Howard, how are you? Instead of being like, hey, I'm awesome. How are you? Instead of you being like, yo, I'm kind of twisted that so and so happened and my heart's kind of broken on this. I'm happy about this, but our unwillingness as a culture to have an honest reckoning in normal conversation about how we feel stifles the thing that just wants to be seen and expressed. All grief wants to be seen and expressed, and we all share it. So if we create ways to express grief and our common connection to it, imagine the impact on our liberation. I mean, the thing becomes that, and you know this as well as I do, not everybody wants to be free.
Right. Not everybody has the same definition of freedom, also. So I think there's some people that prefer to be content or to be appeased, but don't want full liberation or full freedom because it's scary. It's a scary idea to be fully free. And there's some comfort in knowing that one doesn't have to be, or I don't have to be in charge of all of these things. Let somebody else take care of it for me. Let somebody else handle it. And in that way, we just allow things to continue to happen, even if we're not fully liberated, fully happy, fully at peace in our hearts. We'll just accept things, even if they are a fraction of what we truly desire in our hearts, which is full liberation, full, complete collective liberation. But collective liberation too, Reggie, I don't know if we've landed yet on a mutual definition, on a shared human definition of what collective liberation is. Individual liberation has its own pillars and anchors within various spiritual traditions. Collective liberation, it feels like some of the division and the divisiveness is because what some people consider collective liberation is different than what other people think of as collective liberation. And how do we come to a shared definition? How do we come to a shared understanding of liberation?
My dear friend and colleague, our dear friend and colleague, Rev Angel Kyoto Williams, Roshi Sensei, talks about it this way recently that I'm very attracted to, in that my job in my life and practice is to be the most liberated me that I can be, to create the permission structure for you, if you're inspired by my act of liberation, to consider a step closer to your liberation. That's the most possible and tangible experience of collective liberation that I've heard articulated in my life thus far. Because I know, I was saying to someone recently that the career I now have didn't exist 4 years ago. It didn't exist. I make a lot of my money and spend a lot of my time talking through this dot and play these gongs for people in a room in Maryland. Like, my commute is 4 miles and I play gongs for people on the internet. Like, that liberation, people are like, oh, maybe I'll do this. It's like, so the active peace experience of going from a line in a spreadsheet to a global teaching practice has inspired people to consider quitting their job or trying this, or maybe playing music or blah, blah, blah. So the freer and freer that I've become, or even in the context of my stroke recovery. So me being like, hey, I'm hella sick. This totally sucks. Pray for your guy. Or I remember, because I was shocked to the point of tears, and it still makes me emotional, the outpouring of people caring that I was still here, that I had internalized the pathology that many people of color experience in this world, that no one cares if I live or die. So, like, whatever. So why should I be attached to the results of what I do? Because no one cares anyway. I didn't realize the depths of how I ingested that pathology until I got sick, humbled myself, and asked for help. And then, like, everyone and their mama either gave money or tea. I still got tea out the wazoo. You know what I mean? So all this largesse from the world came to me, and I had to find liberation from the ingested pathology that I didn't even know that I had. So that act of liberation got me in tune with the call and response of that. As I sought freedom, the universe was like, yes, be free of that. So I was able to be like, oh my God, so people actually care. Well, if you care, I'm inspired to do more creative stuff. So, like, that liberation is an aspect that I think individual and collective are intertwined, and we just need to articulate it as such, but also with the parameters that just like you being free to hate me because I'm Black is not liberation. You being free to hate me because it is, nah, we ain't accepting that one, dog. Oh, so freedom,
Well, hate is not liberation.
right?
You're chaining yourself if you're hating. So
Absolutely. So in the wellness space where people just use a whole bunch of words and put no feet behind those words, well, I'm not talking about freedom. It ain't YOLO. It's acting in accordance with your healing so that it creates conditions for other people to be healed by your presence.
yeah, it's like tag, you're it. And you shining bright is giving other people permission to shine bright too. So similar to that Nelson Mandela quote. Reggie, I'm feeling something here and I want to lean into this with you because you have a huge community of people. For more than 2 decades, almost 3 decades, you've been involved in political organizing, in teaching. You've acquired and rightfully gained the trust of so many people on social media. You have a large following. And when you went down, when you had the stroke, there was an outpouring of support. I mean, I was sending you things from California. I just want to like take a second and speak to the holidays being a tough time for a lot of people because not everybody is entrenched and holding community as much as someone like you. Like you hold community for other people. You're visible. People know you. There's a lot of people that'll be spending holidays alone. There's a lot of people that where this is a really difficult time where they feel like they don't have the support they need in their lives. There's people that probably have had strokes or had bad illnesses that are listening to this podcast right now that didn't have people mailing them things from across the country. It's a tough world out there. I just want to name that. And if you're listening and you're feeling that sense of loneliness, I just want to offer like a space for you in this moment. And Reggie, just wondering, how would you create a container for that?
Yeah. So the blessing of the life that I've been given to live is that I've had the highest of heights and the lowest of lows. I've spent holidays by myself in a foreign country, damn near homeless, because I've had an apartment fire. That was my fault. So, for those of you for whom you are in a space where you think that no one cares, and my recitation of the good moments in my life may be giving you a bit of unease, bear in mind that I also try to give equal weight to the adverse moments that I've had in my life, because the reason that I proclaim the gifts that I now have is because I also can proclaim the sadness, the deep sadness that I've had as well. You are not alone in feeling that. I'm doing this thing with Kripalu in December. You may know about Hawah, that is holding space for people during the holiday season for whom they feel as though they have no one else. Because I talked to Kripalu a ton. I'm like, yeah, I do it in the beginning of the year, but what about the holidays? People are like hurting over the holidays. Can we give them a space just to hang out with people and maybe not even say anything, but just to be with someone else? To be in a community. And I don't know if you knew this, but something that I've also convinced Kripalu to do is that I hold a metta meditation on Valentine's Day for everyone who's brokenhearted. Because on a day where there's all this focus on love, 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 like there's some love out there that's unrequited and super stuck. So I try to go out of my way to hold space for that. So it came from a brokenheartedness. It came from like, yo, I super miss my brother right now, my homeboy who died of a pulmonary embolism in 2021. And I was just like, I know I'm not the only person who kind of hates love right now because I'm heartbroken. So let's hold space for this heaviness together. And in so doing, Man, that was one of the most beautiful experiences I ever taught. You know what I mean? Because people were like, I came here upset. And I was like, yeah, but we were upset and we shared our upsetness and now we're lighter. So for those of you for whom this season is a bit heavy, you're not alone. And maybe it's just me that you hear it from, but I'm a pretty good person to hear it from, in that I'm not just saying it mechanically. I'm saying it having been there in a person's spare room with no heat. Talk about how the hell did I get here? And is this even worth it? I've been there. And so the testimony that I now have is based on the depths that I have been.
Man. And for those listening, you should know that a lot of this is online. So your session coming up in November, that's a virtual session. No matter where in the world you are, by design, you can have community to be with. You can sign in, and we're going to have links to Reggie's upcoming offerings virtually as well as in person on the episode show notes and descriptions, active peace yoga and Reggie's sound baths and healing meditations and grief circles. All of it is for people that need some community, and you can find community even if you feel isolated. There's communities to join and to gather in. Reggie is a light and a pillar for that, and many others online that you'll be able to connect to if you feel that way. And for those that have never heard of Kripalu, Kripalu is in Massachusetts. It's a center for yoga and health and wellness where Reggie teaches, and I also teach as well. So that's a great response, Reggie. And I think I love how you brought in the depth of sadness is also a great teacher. Sadness is a teacher. Isolation is a teacher. The more we can kind of have the perspective of learning and wanting to learn and grow from the hardest moments in our lives, I think the more we'll be able to crack through some of the blocks that we have emotionally and spiritually. So thank you for calling that in, Reggie.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll share quickly is that our culture totally sucks. So the blessing of all of the practices that I now hold is that it allows me to hold space for everything. Everything that happens in your life, at least for me, has been a tool that I have used for deeper self-inquiry, for deeper love, for deeper connection to spirit. It's super helped my faith because I'm just kind of like, okay, I don't know what to do with any of this, but it's because I sat with it and looked at it, kicked it, screamed at it, and got all the things out so that the silence that was there after that release was just kind of like, okay, now where do I go from here?
Yeah. And that's the space for creation. We're going to make space to have you back again as a guest. I'm dying to have you here, and this is such an honor to have you join the podcast. Anything in closing that you want to share with listeners, and anything we missed or anything you want to kind of drop in?
Yeah, I will end with the same sound practice that I began with, and before, same bowl 11 times, just to round out with sanctity and humility the sacred experience of connected conversation that we just shared. We are in times now that require us to lay aside all delusion, require us to lay aside all hesitation, and trust ourselves to be raw, vulnerable, and honest. It is the only thing that allows for enduring healing to manifest from a terrible situation is being raw, vulnerable, and honest. Like I know that from my most recent experience with the stroke when I was just like, okay, your diet sucks. You need to get your ass in motion and stop being so sedentary. And how you holding on to this stress? You got all these gongs. What are you doing? So like me being so raw and honest created the space to lay forth a plan to be sharing the testimony that I shared with you today. So, adversity that you experience is not the end of the story. It may be the beginning. It just requires us to sit with and hold space for the mystery and miracle that is life. And in honor and celebration of that mystery and miracle, we'll bring back the bell of the ball. And I invite you to take a posture that is supported and comfortable. Relax shoulders. Maybe you even work the neck and shimmy the shoulders. We carry too much stress there. And allowing the eyes to soften or close if that is comfortable for you, but at bare minimum, do not have overly stimulated eyes. Give the eyes a break. And allow these sounds from this bowl to get in touch with the you that is beyond the to-do list, the you that is beyond the fear of what the future holds, and just be present with the beauty that exists in this present moment. Deep inhale through the nose. Exhale out nose or mouth. Releasing anything that gets in the way from your experience of this present moment. And as you're ready, release the meditation.
Aho.
Michelle.
Aho, Ashe. Brother Reggie, thank you for the sonic vibrations, your deep gift of practice, and the way you share your wisdom with all of us. Love you, brother, so much.
Love you too, man.
And thanks for taking the time to join the podcast today.
Absolutely. Love to all.
All right. Thanks, y'all, for joining today. And I hope you found really some inspiration from this beautiful conversation with Reggie Hubbard. If you know someone in your life that could use this medicine, please forward and share this episode with them. Somebody that can use a moment to reflect on grief and gratitude and humility. Reggie is a profound and gifted teacher. He was dropping gems all episode. Please follow up and make sure you find Reggie on social media. He has offerings that will be in the show notes, so website links that can allow you to learn from him and sit within Sangha with him. Sangha means community. It's a Pali word for community. And so if you want to sit in Sangha and learn from him more, you can do all that by digging into the show notes and clicking on the links. And if you've enjoyed this episode, as always, please consider giving it a rating, hit the little 5-star button, and share it with some friends. We need these community-driven voices in a world right now, which is often driven by corporate greed and corporate interests. So this podcast is commercial free. This is all heart. And guests like Reggie, we're all just here giving our time and giving our love because we feel like these conversations are the conversations that shape the world. So thanks for all you do. Thanks for tuning in. As always, you can find me through social media if you want to DM me or message me. If you've got a topic or something you'd love to hear on a future episode, let me know. And keep being kind to each other, keep hitting those gongs, and keep creating active peace. Everlutionary, restoring balance and healing the natural world, is brought to you by me, Hawah Kasat. If you would like to find out more about me and my story, head to hawah.us. That's HAWAH.US. And then make sure to search for me in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening. Stay in touch. Peace.